Today we're going to be talking about how I got into art and how I got into meditation. If you're new here, during these silences, during the periods where I'm silenced, take a few deep breaths and a few alert breaths where you pay attention to how the air fills your stomach. Maybe you're listening while you're driving. Maybe you are listening to this as you do your work or do some chores. Take a few seconds to become alert of the sensory component of that activity. So let's say if you're washing dishes right now, pay attention to how the water is hitting the dish and how it runs over your hand, and feel the water. How did I get into art? Just like that. I've been into art for as long as I can remember. I was very young when I drew a horse with very simple shapes, and I was so fascinated by the process that I drew it again and change up the legs and made a different pose with very simple shapes. And this became and I showed my mother and I showed other people in the house, because I used to live in India, and I grew up in a house where my aunts and uncles and my grandparents all lived together. And so after drawing this horse, I showed everybody, or I showed anyone that was present during that time, and they all loved it. And this became one of my earliest memories from my childhood. This is the last memory I have, the earliest memory that I have. Not the last. The earliest memory that I have. Of drawing. And I don't really remember the time before that. Things might have occurred, obviously, and I may have some memories, but I don't have any of them time-stamped to the period in my life. So this is the earliest memory I have. So I've pretty much been into drawing and painting since, childhood, very early childhood. But I wasn't into Sikh art or Hindu art or anything like that. Any kind of spiritual art or historical or mythological art. I didn't do any of that until I was 11. So early on, I used to just paint. I used to just draw, random things, whatever attracted me. Like horses, for example, animals, or superheroes. My art must have been pretty good. My drawing skills must have been pretty good because my friends, because in India, the teachers, they would write everything on the board. I hope you guys can hear me clearly. They used to write everything on the board and they would draw things. And I have this one memory where the teacher was having difficulty drawing something that she was trying to draw, and she asked the class if one of us could draw it. And immediately one of my friends told the teacher that Bhagat knows how to draw. He can draw that. And so the teacher called me up, and I went up, to the board, and I drew it, and everyone was impressed, including the teacher. So that's the second memory that I have, where one of my friends pointed me out to the teacher, and then I drew it, and then people were, including the teachers and the students, they were all impressed. And I felt great for the next, I believe, like 30 minutes. I couldn't pay attention to anything in class because I was on this high of having done something and having it be admired by other people. And so, I love to draw, and I love to draw the things that I wanted to. Whatever attracted me, I would draw it. And it became my favorite hobby. I did it quite a lot. My uncle from my mother's side, I would go to their house, and my maternal grandfather used to, I don't know what it's called in English, but he would make like symbols and insignias on cloth with thread. So he would stitch these symbols and insignias together. And he did that for the military. He did that commercially, so he did that also for the military back then. And he had taught my uncle to do the same, and my uncle would use this technique to create beautiful works of art. So he would draw things on the cloth through this stitching method. I believe they had like machines and things like that to do it, but like he would do it like it wasn't like an automatic thing. He would have to manually do the stitch. But I believe they used a machine to do it, if I remember correctly. Maybe not. So anyway, they had these beautiful artworks that weren't made of, that they weren't like drawings or paintings. They were actually stitched. They were stitched works of art. And in these artworks, he created like many designs that featured animals. So he had a design of a tiger, and it was a black cloth with orange and white stitching, and I believe gray as well. And so the stripes, the stripe portion of the tiger, the black stripes was the cloth itself, and then he stitched the orange and the white and the gray thread in such a way that it looked like a ferocious tiger that was, just walking or moving silently. So he had that, and he had these hunting scenes where tigers would be chasing these antelope, and it was an action-packed scene because the antelopes looked like they were flying through the air, and the tigers were chasing them with their mouths open wide and their claws ready to strike. Maybe you've seen these designs in India, because I don't think he made them he came up with them. I think this type of design might have existed, and he tried to replicate that with stitching. So I was actually fascinated by this type of art, and I was particularly fascinated with that hunt scene, that scene of the hunt, the tigers hunting. I was really fascinated by that. So much so that I got these large sheets of paper, and then I made copies of them. I made many copies of this. I drew it again and again because I just thought that it was so cool. Like it attracted me so much that I drew it again and again, and I made variations. So I would draw it, and I would change maybe the antlers of the antelope or the deer. I would change the tiger to a lion, because he had just done one scene, and they had it displayed and framed and everything in their drawing room, their living room. And when I went to visit them, I saw this design. I was so impressed that I just kept drawing variations of it. And even when I returned back home, I continued to draw it. And I used the same kind of template, and then I changed things up, moved around the positions, changed how the antelope or the deer, what they looked like, and things like that. And even turned the tiger into a leopard or a cheetah or a lion, simply by changing some shapes. So intuitively, I started to understand that art was just a play of shapes from quite a young age. Even with that horse example, where, simply through shapes, I realized how I could get these random shapes to look like a familiar object, in this case, an animal. So after that, it was actually during this time that Ninja Turtles appeared on the scene, on the Indian scene. And my friends were trying to draw them. I had no idea who they were because I didn't watch the shows. We didn't have like a proper TV that had those channels. So I didn't know what these guys were. I just had like they would bring in certain things that had their images on them, like certain maybe accessories or some. I don't remember. Maybe like a book or something. I don't know. But they would try drawing them, and then when I saw them, I think they also wanted me to draw it, and I also wanted to draw them. So then I did, and they liked them. My friends really liked it, but they really liked my drawings. And so I remember drawing the Ninja Turtles, and then as I got older, like this is still my childhood before 11. I remember coming across the superheroes, like Flash and Green Lantern and things like that. And I would later draw those as well. I think my earliest memories are just these three, of drawing the horse, drawing the animals, and drawing the turtles, the Ninja Turtles.
Have you seen that one video?
So how did I go from that to Sikh art? So this is where that number 11, that age, that was the turning point, because at that time we moved to Canada, and prior to this I had been drawing all these other things, but when we moved here, my parents got me involved in Gurmat camps here. They wanted us to connect to Sikhi, and they wanted to provide us with Gurmat or Gurmati education. And so we learned, Kirtan. We learned to sing and play tabla and things like that. And it was at this time that I was also exposed to Sikh art. Actually, no. I was actually exposed to Sikh art because they would have, prior to this, because they would have artwork in gurdwaras. In India, if you visit the gurdwaras, the historical ones at least, sometimes they will have art that shows the history of that gurdwara. One of my earliest memories is going to this place where Guru Gobind Singh Ji, there was a painting by Kirpal Singh Ji of Guru Gobind Singh Ji seeing his father's decapitated head, and he's surrounded by all the Sikhs, and the decapitated head is in a palanquin. Did I say that right? Palanquin? and he's you know, the whole mood is very, very, very sad, and all the Sikhs are there, and he's looking at it. I remember this painting in a Gurdwara. I remember seeing it, and of course, you know, there were other paintings as well. There were many other paintings. But when we came to Canada and we got involved in Gurmat camps, I came across these books that had a lot more by the same artist, by Kirpal Singh Ji. And he depicted many events from Sikh history. And this wasn't my first time coming into contact with Sikh history. This wasn't my first time coming into contact with Sikh art, but this was a significant contact. This affected me quite a bit, because when I read about it all, when I started learning, and this was also an age when I could actually start understanding some things. So I started looking, like when I saw one book, I started looking through other books, because in the Gurdwara they have a library. So I went in and started looking at other books. I believe this was the library, not of actually the Gurdwara, but of the principal of the academy that would run these Gurmat camps and the Kirtan and Punjabi classes. If you live in Brampton, or if you live near Brampton, you know the Glidden Gurdwara. This is the Gurdwara I'm talking about. I'm talking about Kal Academy. And so the principal of this academy at that time Sardar Gurdev Singh Taliwal. He actually passed away recently. The last time I saw him was, I believe, either just after or some years after completing the painting of Shivji. And anyway, he saw that I had talent, artistic talent, and he actually bought me all kinds of materials, mainly bristle boards and water paints and paintbrushes, and some oil paints and canvas as well. And at first it was the bristle boards, and he asked me to take some of these paintings and actually enlarge them onto the bristle board. And I had a lot of fun doing that. So during summers, I would actually paint. I remember we used to have this octagon-shaped table. We still do, actually. We still do. This octagon-shaped table where I would lay out the bristle board and put my water and my water paints and my paintbrushes, and I would take one of these books, open up to the painting that I wanted to paint, and I would just paint it on there. And I believe what he would do is he would take the painting, put this colored electrical tape around the borders to create a neat border, and he would display them in the Gurdwara at that time. By the way, this story does not end well for these paintings, because the later management did not care for them, and I don't know where these paintings went. I did come back later to look for them, and I did find one, and it was on the floor, the painting of Guru Nanak Dev Ji on the floor, and it was in a poor state, and it looked like it had been trampled on. And I was so angry I'd come there with my dad. I was so angry. I told my dad, let's get out of here. But now I actually feel that I should have actually taken the paintings, and because I had only left it there in anger. When I saw how these paintings were being treated, I just left it there in anger and sadness and disappointment. But anyway, back to... At that time, I got into painting Sikh art through making copies of the artwork by Kirpal Singh Ji. There were other artists as well, like for example, that painting of Guru Nanak Dev Ji was by Sobha Singh Ji. And I believe there were some paintings that I really liked by Meher Singh Ji. These are the three artists. There were others as well, because these books, they were pretty varied. They had different artists featured in them. So they would have like a historical episode along with the artwork that corresponded to that episode. And each book would have different artists that were featured in it. So there were some books that were, just had the artwork of Kirpal Singh Ji, whereas other books would have artwork. For example, one just had artworks by Meher Singh Ji. And then there's other artists as well. So after this time, or around this time, I was also making drawings of, He-Man and things like that. Some of the cartoons that would play around that time period, I would make drawings of these superheroes. It never occurred to me to draw because these drawings I did on like small size papers, whereas the paintings I did on large bristle boards. It never occurred to me to draw like Sikh characters or any other type of character. So like in my personal, or what I felt like was my personal work, that was mostly like, I think, superheroes and other things like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example. At this time, Yu-Gi-Oh had just come on the scene with the Yu-Gi-Oh and Kaiba decks. And I would draw Blue Eyes White Dragon and Dark Magician, things like that. So this went on for a bit, and then came the age of the internet, when internet started becoming very popular. And there was this guy who was working on Taran Singh, he was working on Cerebral Warriors at that time. And it was supposed to be like the first Sikh video game. And I wanted to basically, be involved in it in any way possible, because I enjoyed playing games, enjoyed playing video games. And by this time I was quite, because this whole period where I was painting Sikh art, I was actually reading about Sikh history as well. So I was really getting into it. I was learning Kirtan, I was learning Sikh history, I was learning about Sikh art, and I was doing Sikh art and doing kirtan and things like that. In the Gurmat camps, we would do speeches, we would say things, we would say poems, we'd go on the stage and do kirtan. This was a great period for learning, and I really got into Sikh history around this time. So by the time Cerebral Warriors came around, and I heard about this project, I wanted to get involved, and I did. And this is when I started drawing Sikh characters in my personal like on the smaller sheets of paper, because one of the things I had to do for this game was actually scan any artwork that I did. I had to scan it and color it digitally and then send it to him. So I would do concept art of the different characters in the game, and I would draw them on this 8.5 by 11-inch paper, and I would scan it. I would go into Photoshop and I would color it and send it to him, and he would review it and then give me feedback and things like that. And this was the time period when I got into drawing essentially fictional Sikh characters. So not only did I draw these characters, but I remember drawing other characters that I had just made up by myself. These characters he had come up with, and he had told me about them, and he wanted me to do the concept art. But later on, I would actually go and I would go in and do my own characters when I was not working on this game. So it turns out the game didn't really go anywhere. I did quite a bit of work, but it never really took off. So at this time I was enrolled into university, and I started working on that. So it was around university, that's when I got into painting Sikh art, because when I was doing the artwork for Cerebral Warriors, I learned how to paint digitally to some degree, but I wanted to take my skills to the next level as well. So at this time I started learning digital painting. So previously I had done watercolors and oil paintings. I'd also done acrylic paintings at school, for different school projects. I was just reminded of all the memories from school. I have different memories from the things I did at school as well. And I always got positive feedback for the things I did from my teachers. They really enjoyed it. And they always encouraged me. Specifically this one teacher who is retired now. She always encouraged me to create artwork. And she would handle different things around the school. She would create art for like the columns or the pillars in the school. And she would ask me like, hey, do you want to do it? And I'd be like, yeah, for sure. And then she would also get students to paint sets for different this is like a whole another video, because this is like the school life. And so she was in charge of creating the sets that the drama teacher used. And so I don't think I actually created any of the sets. I might have. I don't remember creating any. But there were some other things that I did around this time. Anyway, so it was university. It was during university when I started to paint Sikh history as like a personal not on any kind of commission or any kind of instruction, but just through my own self, because I wanted to. Because the previous periods of making Sikh history artwork led me to this moment where I felt like I should do it. I saw some artwork online of, Sikh history, and I said, I could do this as well, and I wanted to do it. And at that time, I wasn't skilled enough to pull it off, so I had to learn quite a bit. And I just learned kind of on the job, so to speak, where I would just pick up a painting that I would want to do, and I would just learn how to paint the different elements of that painting. So I created my Pagoji painting, the first painting at this time, and then from there, that's where SikhArt.com started. At that time, I was only interested in painting Sikh history. I did not know much about how the mythological characters, the gods, how they were associated with Sikhi, how they were a part of Sikhi. I didn't realize that. I always believed that, because this is what we were taught, that these things are not part of Sikhi, and the gurus are only making references. They're not really. There's nothing. There's no other connection there beyond just somebody mentioning it. This is what we were told in the Gurmat camps as well, unfortunately. So I was only interested in painting Sikh history at that time. So that's what I did for quite a bit, until, of course, like, I started meditating, and then I started realizing the deeper truths in that. I guess we'll talk about how I got into meditation at another time. I have actually talked about it in my first video. I have actually talked about it a little bit. But yeah, this was about how I got into painting Sikh history. We will probably do another episode on meditation, and we'll probably also do another episode on mythology, about the gods, how I got into painting the gods, and because that was after I got into meditation, and after discovering something very profound, and realizing how this profound thing was at the heart of all religions. So, that opened me up to learning about the different religions, and then I started seeing the connections. I started seeing that the gods were more than mere references in Gurbani. So I was like, I have to paint them as well. So originally I only had the plan of painting Sikh history. I remember a friend was asking me, he was helping me make my website and things like that, and he's like, you got to pick a name that is going to reflect the kinds of things you're going to paint. And I said, I'm only going to paint Sikh history. I know that. I'm only going to paint Sikh history. But here we are. Here we are. We're always here. So just take a few deep breaths. Be alert. I'll see you guys later.